1917 Act. But still, it's an early example of what we'll see more and more of as the 20th century progresses, which is the way the laws are enforced matters. It's not just the way they're written; it's the way they're enforced matters tremendously in the immigration world. And so Hoover, with this executive order, essentially squeezes immigration to very low levels. He brags in his re-election campaign in '32 that something like 90% of the visa slots were unused. 94% of visa slots were unused. That was a campaign issue for Hoover. So, needless to say, immigration was not popular in the Hoover years. In 1933, Hitler takes power in Germany, and within a few months of that, FDR is inaugurated in the U.S. So, do not blame Hoover for what happens later. Briefly, there's no doubt in anybody's mind of Hitler's rampant, raving anti-Semitism in 1933. It's been very clear, and he immediately issues some anti-Semitic laws, but they tend not to be very successful. They're boycotts, and they are laws prohibiting the practice of certain occupations. They're nasty, but they're not genocidal yet, and they also tend to be not successful at the federal level. And so after between 1933 and 1935, most of the anti-Semitic laws are done on a regional basis. They're the individual German provinces, and so it matters where you happen to live. Some places it's much worse than others. In 1935, the Nuremberg race laws are passed. Those are, again, very nasty, but they're comparable perhaps to the Jim Crow laws present in the South at this time. They're not genocidal yet. It's really 1938 when it could not be passed out, the Kristallnacht event, where massive violence clearly orchestrated from above and deportation of large numbers of people take place. That's when he really no longer absolutely cannot deny that Germany is no place for Jews. But by 1939, the war begins and it becomes more difficult for Jews to escape, though not impossible, as we'll still see. So the real window of opportunity is here between 38 and 39. The window of opportunity for the U.S. to do something about it really starts to close after 1939. Still, that's a lot of time. It's a lot of time, and we'll see that the U.S. really drops the ball. So first question, what was the U.S. reaction to various of Hitler's race policies? And there really was very little reaction. We've seen that after World War I, there was quite a lot of powerful anti-Semitism that in fact motivated some of the immigration laws. There were, I don't think I mentioned Father Coughlin before, but I certainly mentioned Henry Ford. Both of them were very public figures who were convinced that the Jews both caused the Depression and the Russian Revolution, and they were getting ready to blame the Jews for fascism as well. In 1922, there was a quote proposed on Jewish admission to Harvard, and there were also restrictive covenants, which we may get to later. Restrictive covenants are not laws, but they're clauses in real estate contracts that simply say things like you can't sell your house to a fill in the blank. These were ruled unenforceable in the 1950s, but they included Jews along with blacks and Asians in the 1920s. So with this backdrop of anti-Semitism, Jewish organizations definitely saw that they saw the danger that lay ahead for Jews in Europe. They were rather timid about what to propose because they feared a situation where it would be charged that America's Jews want to sacrifice America's obvious essential interests on behalf of their German co-religionists. So they tended to tread fairly lightly. FDR did not step up to the lead, and so in fact no one does. Now, FDR's politics were not really anti-Semitic. They were not really anti-immigrant. They were really just pro-FDR. And the politics were very much against helping refugees of any sort at this point. This was a depression. And he had, in 1932 elections, Hoover had bragged that he had managed to reduce immigration. This was obviously part of the story. So FDR did not rescind Hoover's LPC order. He instead sought to mollify the pro-immigrationists by appointing Edward Corsi, who was very popular among, left wing, very popular among the immigration liberals, and he was an Italian immigrant, and he appointed him to run the Commerce Department. So, he appointed a commissioner of Ellis Island. Is the idea. So he put visible pro-immigration people in charge of Ellis Island. But as we pointed out, the business of Ellis Island was mostly deportation at this point. People who were coming to Ellis Island already had their documents in hand. The immigrants were being stopped in Europe by remote control. The Jews were also not a constituency that FDR needed to court. So there was another political reason for him not to stick his neck out in favor of Jewish refugees. And again, as we mentioned, though, in the cabinet, Breckinridge Long was Wilbur Carr's successor. Wilbur Carr was the guy who fed Albert Johnson all those nasty quotes from consulate reports about how awful Jews and Italians were. Well, Breckinridge Long takes over, and he's just as anti-Semitic. I have a quote from him later. We can delay and effectively stop for a temporary period or of indefinite length the number of immigrants into the United States. We can do this by simply advising our consuls to put every obstacle in the way and to require additional evidence and to resort to various administrative devices which would postpone the granting of visas. So he's an operator, and he's such a raving anti-Semite that he's scared of even refugee children. In the second term, resistance remains, but the pressure rises a little, and FDR proceeds somewhat cautiously. In 1938, as we mentioned, the Nazis ramp up pressure. There's the Anschluss, that is the invasion of Austria. There's Kristallnacht, and there's Aryanization of Jewish businesses. What FDR does is he extends visitors' visas to German Jews who are already in the United States. But the State Department responds by making visitors' visas harder to get for people who are not already in the United States. And they do this simply by making administrative rules, which they can do the way the laws are written. And so they make it simply a State Department directive that you can't get a visitor's visa unless you have unless you still have a domicile. In other words, you can't get a visitor's visa if you're a refugee. Right? So if you're not inside the country, you can't. FDR also calls this, he merges, he gets managed to merge the Austrian and German quotas. That's easy to do because Germany and Austria have merged. That makes the German quotas pretty large, remember, because there were a lot of Germans in the U.S. Prior to the 1924 Act. And the Austrian quota is small, so this does help a little bit, but we're still talking about tens, 20s of thousands of people when there were hundreds of thousands that really needed to escape. And finally, this really says that the Wagner-Rogers Bill in 1939 was just to admit 20,000 refugee Jewish children outside of the quota. Refugee children. And it never made it out of committee. And it was in large part because of the argument of Breckinridge Long that among these refugee children would be spies. Hard to see, but that's what it was. What it was in fact like. So, as I do want to move along, let me summarize slightly. The Reed-Johnson Act clearly contributed to the tragedy. There's no way around it. The fact that it had no provision for refugees and it put the State Department in charge of visas made it very hard for a president or anyone to get around it. It's not that FDR really tried, but it's not clear that he could have succeeded if he had. Public opinion was always hostile to accepting Jewish refugees. This is actually wrong. This was 86%, not 64%. 86% wanted to keep all refugees out, according to a Fortune magazine poll in 1938. And FDR was certainly more focused on the economy. So, do we call it a moral failure? I'm not sure, but it is certainly something we hope that our legislators can learn from. We have just a few minutes left. Let's start at least on the other story. So the Mexican migration is yet a different story, one that is not so much under the thumb of the State Department, but more of the Labor Department. And rather than trying to keep these immigrants out, the Labor Department was very interested in getting them in because they provided cheap labor. Let's start, though, if we could, by noting this Rodriguez decision. So I think this was mentioned in Daniels, but I'm not certain. The Rodriguez decision is another one of those whiteness cases that we talked about before. Ricardo Rodriguez. He applied for citizenship. He's a native of Mexico and a resident of San Antonio, Texas. And the Texas District Court ruled that he was a citizen and never appealed. And I just wanted to point out that the reason was the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo, which is to say that it was the end of the Mexican-American War, which granted Mexican residents of areas ceded to the U.S. by Mexico. It granted them citizenship. And so, effectively, that granted them whiteness, which, as the court grudgingly said, the strict scientific classification of the anthropologist would not have probably classified as white this time. So it's another curious angle, but it's important to our story because it means, of course, that Mexican immigrants are Western Hemisphere, so they're non-quota, and they're eligible for citizenship. So it makes it kind of interesting that it turns out that they will wind up being largely illegal migrants nonetheless. First, if we go back to World War I, there was a contract labor system instituted by the Secretary of Labor exploiting a loophole in the 1917 Act with the intention of trying to get Mexican labor to come and fill in for labor shortages that always come about with war. And the program was extended. It's interesting again to note that this is one of those regulatory stories. This was not a law passed by Congress. This was not the way this law was intended. The 1917 Immigration Act, it probably intended to allow the Secretary of Labor to admit one or two people for some particular purpose. But the Secretary of Labor misread it creatively and negotiated a deal with the Mexican government whereby fairly large numbers of Mexican immigrants would come to the U.S. on temporary work arrangements. And Mexico was made a very they bargained hard, and so this deal was not as exploitive as one might have imagined. They were aware of unpleasant treatment that migrants had received previously, and so they insisted that workers would be able to bring their families, that wages and working conditions would be agreed in advance, and the contracts would be signed by immigration officials. Okay? But once again, enforcement was very, very weak. This wave of migration dissipated quickly when rumors spread that Mexicans might be conscripted to serve in the army. All right. All right, I think I'm going to leave it here and pick this up again on Wednesday. So if there are questions on any of that stuff, I apologize for how disjoint this is, but there's a lot of things that happened in this interwar period. So we'll pick it up here with illegal immigration, why Mexican immigration was illegal even though it was largely unquota. Okay, thanks. Yes.